I use the most expensive hair color in the world, preferenced by L'Oreal. It's not that I care about the money, it's that I care about my hair.
It's not just the color. I expect great color. What's worth more to me is the way my hair feels. Smooth and silky, but with body. It feels good against my neck. Actually,
I don't mind spending more for L'Oreal because I'm worth it. I wrote that.
So welcome everyone to our insider discussion on the making of the final copy of Ilon Specht, which is an official selection this year at Brand Storytelling 2025. My name is Geneva Wasserman. I am the Executive Vice President of Film and Television Development and Investment for Dentsu. And I'm so excited to be here today with Brendan Gaul from Traverse 32, Ali Goldstein, Brand President, L'Oreal Paris, and Bren Proudfoot, the director of this beautiful film. Ali, can you tell us a little bit about what your role is and about this film and what brought you to the film?
Sure. Thanks, Geneva. Hi, I'm Ali. I'm super excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm, as you mentioned, I'm the president of the L'Oreal Paris brand in the United States. So I oversee the business here. And we are thrilled to have our film featured in the festival. So just to give you some context, as a brand, we believe that the purpose of the L'Oreal Paris brand is to do much more than sell beauty products. More importantly, we speak to the fact that our mission is really to empower women everywhere to feel confident, to feel good in what their worth is, so that, in fact, they can succeed at doing whatever they want to do. And our job as a brand is to help them feel that way. And so that really is embodied in our tagline, "Because You're Worth It," which was written by Ilon Specht more than 50 years ago. And so we are truly honored to partner on a film that brings to life the development of this fantastic tagline. And it really has become the manifesto of our brand, and a female manifesto supporting women's empowerment.
Amazing. And tell us a little bit about how you came together with Ben and with Brendan, or maybe you guys can chime in as well.
Sure. I'm happy to jump in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks. So so Brendan Gaul, I'm the global president of Traverse 32, producer on the film, and I lead content across IPG Mediabrands. And our team at McCann that works on the L'Oreal Paris business, and the team based in Paris, had been trying to crack how to bring this idea to life for, it was almost like 7 years. And they had engaged me in a conversation just based on some of our past work in bringing, brand stories to life in premium ways. And it was so interesting, right? I was as a kind of advertising marketing nerd, I had like a lean in moment where I was like, oh my God, like how do people not know this story more broadly? And Ben and I have developed a relationship over the past couple of years through the brand storytelling community. And, I think it's safe to say we've always been looking for the right project to partner on. And, as we were digging into the story with the McCann team and the L'Oreal Paris team, it just became clear to me and the rest that Ben was the exact right director and voice to bring onto the project, specifically based on the way that Ben has a history of telling incredible stories about women that have made a difference in the world that maybe haven't gotten the recognition or that time has passed by. And it was a couple conversations, right, between us to get the yes from Ben to come onto the project. And I think I couldn't imagine it had gone another way.
Amazing. And as I mentioned to Ben earlier, I'm a big fan of your work, Ben. And as a director, what really resonated with you about Elon's story? Can you tell us a little bit about that from the conversations with Brendan and with Ali? What was it an instant yes? Was it something that you wanted to think about, or is it something that just resonated instantly?
Yeah, well, there's there's always a lot of questions at the sort of onset to figure out if the story has to be right, and then the sort of like environment and the partnership and the intentions also have to be right. And I think the first thing that really opened my eyes was actually a piece of archival film that Brendan sent me that I don't know if you found that or where it came from, but it was like basically this ad from an alternate universe where the speech, the "Because You're Worth It" speech that Elon had written was performed by a man because she's worth it. And it was this sort of like bizarro universe in which the man in the relationship was explaining he was the one that was deciding that she was worth it. And there's just something sort of it makes your skin crawl and sort of curdling about watching that, about like, here's another version of what L'Oreal could have done and didn't do. Ultimately, they filmed both ads side by side, which is in the film. And I think that was the first time where I thought, oh, there's some substance here. There's also willingness on behalf of McCann, on behalf of L'Oreal Paris, to go into their archives and dredge it up, whatever it is, and tell an honest documentary story, which is what we need to do our job as filmmakers. And the only missing question was, where is Ilon today? And, is she willing to speak to me as a filmmaker? And, it took a little while to track her down, but basically the first time I spoke with her on the phone, as you can imagine, was very memorable. And by the end of that conversation, I thought, okay, I think there's a really compelling film here. And then it was just a question of, were we going to be able to build a trusting enough relationship that I could go make a documentary film, which is what I owed Elon. She didn't want to be in an advertisement, as you can imagine. She knew too much. And at the same time, have it, which is a huge leap of faith for Ali and Brendan and the whole L'Oreal team, like, okay, like, tell the story as it is and let's see what comes back. And that was the beginning of it. So everyone had to take some risks. And I think that's why the film turned out so well, is because everybody sort of trusted the process.
I think that's what hooked me. I mean, when I saw this film, I immediately was emotionally impacted by it. I felt the authenticity come through of the brand, and I felt like even closer to I felt like, wow, this is a brand that shares my values, and I was just like, this is, I hope I can say this, but it was like kind of like, what a badass brand, and like to go back 50 years, and I just felt like this is, so modern for that time, but also so lasting and relevant. It's probably the most impactful campaign that I can even think of, right? And it's endured 50 years. It came through so much for me as just a viewer, that, I have to say that it feels like, if Elon's saying she doesn't want to be in an ad, it almost feels like this is the next generation of advertising, is being authentic and starting conversations with audiences. Is that what you were setting out to do a little bit, is to push it forward in that way?
I mean, for us as a brand, that was actually that's the point of the whole thing, and that's why we chose Ben. That's why we chose to work with Traverse. This is not an ad. This is not a case study. This is a story of an amazing woman who left a legacy in this unbelievable tagline. And so, as we thought about who to partner with, this became, okay, we needed someone who could bring stories to life. But more than that, it was really about finding someone like Ben who knew how to create an emotional connection with the audience and actually stir people a little bit, right? Like there's so much in this film. There's what it impacted for the brand, of course, but there's also the relationship she had and what was happening at the time with women in the workforce. There's clearly the relationship with her stepdaughter. There's so much depth in the film. And so for us, this was not, as a brand, we were not there to micro direct the film, not at all. Like, we had to find someone that we could really trust, and Ben, who just, understood the brand, understood the meaning of the tagline, because you're worth it, and could truly bring the story to life. And so that's what we found in Ben, and we're thrilled.
I love that because you just answered my next question.
Yeah.
Which was what kind of hand did you have in this, and the freedom that you felt, Ben, and the trust that you had between between the three of you working together. I think this is more for Ben and Brendan, like that process. And it sounds like Ali answered it. It was like there's this trust, and you were given, the ability to go and make the best possible premium documentary.
Yeah. I mean, I think when all three parties in this case are wholly aligned on the reverence for, L'Oreal, the most important beauty brand in the world, the line that is one of the most important lines ever written, and then ensuring that we're all there to honor the subject, and in this case, the hero of the film, Elon. As long as we have that alignment, I find in working with clients, and partners like Ben, it's okay to step back and let the creative process happen, because we're so in sync about what's important, to the story and where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, my loyalty as a filmmaker always has to be to the storyteller, to Elon, because that's who I represent in it. Like that is the thing that I cannot violate or betray, is the relationship with Elon. So in our relationship with Traverse 32 and with L'Oreal, I asked for final cut and I was given it. And that, I think, speaks to the that is very unusual and very risk-taking and bold. And so when Ali or Brendan says like, oh, we didn't micro direct this film, or we weren't there, like that is true. Like they were true patrons of the film in saying, you as an artist, go tell the truth. Because many brands, I mean, it's sort of scared, like, okay, open our files from 50 years ago and tell the story. And that the story is about a room full of misogyny that Elon pushed against. I mean, both on the McCann side too. It's like, that is a brave decision. And never once did I ever feel interfered with in any way, shape, or form. My job was to give Elon the platform that she wished for. And also to bring meaning to her personal life, with her stepdaughter, Allison, which kind of becomes the second story in the film. I think that's probably one of the most beautiful parts of this story, is that it's not simply that Elon was a very clever copywriter, which of course she was, in writing Because You're Worth It. She lived it. She not only said it or wrote it, she actually, that was who she was. And maybe, and this is kind of what I walk away from the film thinking, is maybe it's because she believed it and because she lived it, why those words are so lasting. They were not a creation designed to sell anything. They were her truth that she felt powerfully in that moment, that resonate on and on and on and on. And I think there's something, impactful there to anyone who does any work, that sort of drives you to, if you only speak from the heart, speak from your own truth, that's where the magic is. And I think
it's like words from the heart enter the heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I felt. And it felt like, as you were talking, I'm like, oh, you're describing producers. You had two excellent producers on this. You didn't have a brand. You didn't have an agency. You had excellent supportive producers, which is what, I think brand supported storytelling. I actually personally don't like the word branded content. I think of it more as like brand enabled or.
Yeah. I agree, Geneva, and I think that's part of why, at Interpublic Group, we set up Traverse 32 to do work exactly like this, right? Because, if Ben, you had said, it's rare that a director gets final cut. The work that we do, most of the time, a director will have final cut. And actually, the way that we define, the difference of a film and an ad that looks like a film is whether or not the brand had creative control and final cut on the project. And there's lots of agencies within our network that can do that, but we very specifically seek the kind of most premium entertainment and film form where we're empowering our directors to do their best work.
Yeah, that totally came through. And I think that, I have a question later on, maybe I'll jump to now, which is, there's always been this division between sort of like when a brand gets involved, you think of it as being branded content. And, I think that there's a small community of us that are saying, no, it's content that's good content, or it's good filmmaking, television. And if a brand gets involved, it just amplifies excellent premium storytelling. Do you see this film as part of that movement forward, where this film's excellent with or without the brand, right? It's just made better because of the brand.
Well, I mean, I think in this story in particular, the brand is so central to it. And frankly, the story wouldn't have been told without the brand, right? So the brand giving the access to the archives, allowing, our team and Ben's team to do such a kind of deep dive into it. So from a marketing standpoint, I think that L'Oréal Paris, obviously Ilon is the hero of the story, but the marketing story, Ilon Paris is the hero of the story because they were the impetus of making this happen and bringing it to the world, and allowing the story to be out there. I think, when you think about what's happening in the industry right now, and why L'Oréal Paris is one of those brands that could tell a story with this much kind of gravitas and cultural weight, is because they've never forgotten who they are, and what they stand for. I think so many brands today have been so over calibrated in performance marketing that they forget what the brand stands for. And I think that L'Oréal Paris is one of the best examples of a brand that, while has a mix of performance marketing in what they do, has never forgotten who they're there to serve, and what they stand for. Ali, I'm curious what you think.
No, and I think we talk about performance marketing or not. Today, in the end, consumers they see through things, right? Like they're smarter than ever before. And so I think and when you think of this film, really, we wanted to also give credit to a woman who didn't really get the credit she was due. So first and foremost, telling her story, being able for Ben to meet her and interview her, it was a real honor, actually, to bring her to life and expose in a very positive way who Ilon was. What she did wasn't easy. 1970s, the only woman in the room and fighting for what she felt was right. That's a remarkable story that we were really honored and proud to tell. And so when you think about a brand, yes, it's our tagline, and we are lucky to have this tagline, but what the courage she had and the bravery she had at that moment needed to be recognized and needed to be told. So first and foremost, that was really important. And then I think we needed to do it in a way that felt really authentic and not overproduced and not from it's not a commercial, we're not, this isn't an ad. This is first and foremost bringing to the life of the story of a fantastic woman who had some really great work. And that's what we wanted to do. And I think in the end, consumers will hopefully see it that way and sort of have a deeper connection with the brand because they see that we are supporting women. We support Elon back 50 years ago, and we continue to do so. And maybe that will have a positive impact of their relationship with the brand. And if not, that's okay too. But we still stand by our like purpose to bring to life women, strong women, successful women. And Elon is a great one.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, I think empowerment was so authentically through and through the storytelling and just who she was. And it was just really, at the end when you realize that she's passed, it's heartbreaking,
Yeah.
and beautiful at the same time.
Yeah.
I guess, Ben, having spent that time sort of at the end of her life, which I would imagine, and it opens, right, where she says, I'm dying. Um, are there any moments you can share with us about, just that process for you and just being with someone, learning about their story from their stepdaughter, from, their world and from their own words? Anything that you can share from that process that you think would be important that maybe people don't know or wouldn't know?
Yeah, I mean, to step inside someone's home in the last months of their life, when it's really, I mean, you can tell in the film, I mean, this is the end. And it really felt, it was almost like a religious experience, right? Of last rites or something, where it's like, okay, we're coming in and you're going to tell your story. This is probably the last time you're going to have a chance to tell this story. And it just so happens that millions of people are going to see this. There was a great weight to the whole scenario because of that. Not because of the circumstances, but just human to human. Like, okay, like we don't really know each other that well yet, but like we're going to do this thing together. We're going to hold hands, and you're going to relay the story as you understood it. And so, she lived in the Dakota, the famous apartment building that you see in the film. And we weren't exactly sure what the rules were in terms of filming inside there, I'll say. So we had to kind of find a way to pack our stuff away and get it up to her very beautiful and grand New York apartment. And she was very weak. And so we took our cues from her of when she was ready to film. We left the camera set up for many weeks without filming a frame until she called and said, we're ready. And then we flew back out from Los Angeles to New York. But there was, I think there was 3.5 weeks when everything was set up and there, but we didn't shoot a frame because she wasn't ready.
Wow.
So it's like total, and it's like a very small crew of just, 3 or 4 people. Total opposite of, what you would imagine sort of this kind of thing being. And,
Wow.
She walked down the hall very slowly with the aid of her nurse and sort of laid down in her guest bed before the camera. And, it was not a long conversation, maybe an hour and a half or something like that, where she told her story. And, she invited us into her bedroom where she was sort of holding court. It's a enormous privilege to be. I mean, I lost my dad in May 2020, and he was sick in the house for his final weeks, and I can't imagine a camera being there. I just like, I can't imagine what that was like. So the bravery and the vulnerability that she exhibited by inviting us there, and the enormous sort of leap of faith that she had to say, yeah, come in and film me in this state, was extraordinary. And so we felt deeply responsible to make sure that whatever film came out of this was something that Elon would appreciate. There's no way, she didn't see the film. The film was not done by the time she had passed away. And I can tell you 100% there's no way she would have no notes because she was that kind of lady. I mean, she's a creative director and a good one. But I believe, and I think, you know, her family has definitely relayed that it relays in the spirit of you know, how she thought. And not that the job is done and misogyny is over, that there's a lot of work to do, but that because you're worth it is not a meaningless corporate tagline. It's actually enshrined with enormous human meaning and potential that has weight and meaning. And she was the origin of that.
Amazing. Amazing. I think that really came through again as a viewer, all of that. And it was just absolutely beautiful. In terms of like distribution and when you make a film, and getting it out to the world, and perhaps this is for all three of you, but and particularly I would say Brendan, you know, and Allie, how did you approach, you know, making sure that this got to the world? Was it, let's put it out to as many people as possible? Did you have a different approach to how you wanted to have distribution of the film, or can you take us through kind of the thinking there?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to jump in. Something that I also think was something that I haven't really seen before, and it was based on the longstanding relationship between McCann and L'Oréal Paris. You know, when Ben called and said that Ilon was in her final, you know, days or months, and we had to go, we all also joined hands and just jumped. So the film actually was shot and produced before any of the contracts or deals were done.
Oh, wow.
We just released the money and went as fast as possible to make sure that Ben was able to tell the story that Elon wanted to tell.
Amazing. And that's another, I mean, again, going back to values of L'Oreal, right? You're living your values, and that's an incredible, an incredible testament to that. Amazing.
I think that speaks to the fact that when something is right, we will make it happen.
Yeah.
You know, when you just know it's right, it doesn't matter. You just go. I mean, it's exactly what you're saying. And I think we live true to that still on other projects, you know. When it's the right thing to do, it's we don't have to think so deeply about it. We just go. Trust your instincts a bit.
Well, that is, in the brand world, I do know there's a lot of what do we say, paralysis by analysis, and things just don't happen. So just being, you know, it seems like Elon was a force of nature, and that was fit with the ethos of L'Oréal Paris as well. And again, all of that comes through, which is amazing to do in 18 minutes. So I don't know, Brenda, if we want to.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So on distribution, you know, we've thought about this film as something that we want the largest audience possible to see. You know, I think Elon giving that line to the world is such a gift, and you know, and Ben now delivering this film is also a gift that we want to give to the world. We want as many people to see it as possible. Because we do you know, believe in her story and how powerful it is. You know, so there's a lot of conversations that are happening right now. The documentary short as a medium has it's nuanced from a distribution standpoint. I think, you know, Ben can add, but it's we're working through it. You know, I think that we'll have some exciting announcements really soon because we're in multiple conversations. But with L'Oréal Paris being a global brand, it's also important that our distribution plans hit, you know, multiple countries and multiple countries at the same time. So there's a lot of coordination involved in bringing it to the world. That being said, you know, our initial strategy is a festival strategy, and you know, winning at Holly Shorts, which, you know, qualifies it for an Oscar. I think it's won at 4 out of 5 festivals that we've played at so far, and we have invitations to more going into next year. So this is just the beginning of the story of the film. But we are eager and excited to have a wider release so that so many more people can see it.
Beautiful. Did you want to add anything, Ben or Ali, on that? No.
Short documentaries, yeah, like Brennan said, there's not a ton of options, right? Like the thoroughfare for feature films, for television series, for a lot of other sort of like more common formats are well trodden. Short documentary is something that has really sort of come back, really with the advent of the internet, and I think just YouTube in general, its success and people's clear appetite for shorter form storytelling. But it's an evolving landscape, and so it's difficult to figure out what the path is when there's so many different competing reasons and ideas of what distribution should look like. But one thing I know with this film is that we're all on the same page and that we want as many people as possible to hear Elon's story. And I feel confident that that is what's going to happen in the end. And sometimes, we have to be patient. The festival circuit could take, I've been on the festival circuit for a year sometime for a film, but we're excited for the world to meet Elon.
I'm excited too, and I'm excited to see all of the impact it's already made, but also will continue to make, and just how it's touching, hearts and minds, which is that's the ultimate testament, I think, to storytelling. So in terms of just impact, right, and thinking about impact on individuals, I can imagine it's touching women in a really like powerful way and empowering, and I'm sure men as well, or giving a perspective. Just like I think when we watched Mad Men, we were like, wait, what? But in terms of industry impact and takeaways, how do you feel this movie or this film is sort of moving things forward, for L'Oreal, but also just for the industry?
I mean, I think the film really gives us, someone mentioned responsibility. We had a responsibility to bring this story to life and to honor Elon and what she was able to deliver. And I think as a brand, it is our responsibility, even more so, to tell stories and connect with our consumers beyond the products. So, this film is one thing we do. We have other programs like Women of Worth, where we recognize real women, not celebrities, no one famous, who are doing impact. And I think that's what consumers, that's what people want, is, for big companies to have impact in society beyond just making money, right? And so we've really taken that to heart, and we look for opportunities to do more and more of that, because it is important. And I think what's so fascinating about this film and about the tagline is, because you're worth it has evolved. Like, the meaning of the tagline has evolved so much over 50 years, which is why it stood the test of time, right? And it's connected. So when you think of, everyone who has seen this film has connected with it, and some people connect with it because of her directly. Some it hits them because of the mother-daughter relationship. For others, the tagline has brought to life issues of diversity, in terms of multicultural. So as a brand, though, that's where you think it's so important to find ways to connect with consumers, no matter what it means for them, and I think I would love to be a very positive example of how brands can do that in a really authentic way,
and I think you have. I think if you can hit emotion in storytelling and entertain, I mean, it's also, this is entertainment as well. I mean, it's informational, it's educational, but it's also entertaining, and inspiring, and in some ways heartbreaking, because it brings up, as you said, different emotions in different people on different levels. So that's really beautiful. I think, Ben, you've worked with so many different mediums and subjects. When working with brands, what would you say your the best lessons you've learned, right, as a participant in telling a brand story, which I think is a bit only slightly nuanced, right, from telling any story, but there's a nuance there. And do you have any lessons that you've learned or anything that you can share on that journey that you've been on when working with brands?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of filmmakers make a mistake when they get approached by a brand, or they approach a brand or whatever happens. They first thing is they see dollar signs in their eyes, and they take off all of their independent filmmaker clothes and they put on a different set of clothes, and they put their independent filmmaker toolbox over here, and they bring in a different toolbox, and they speak differently, and the set looks differently, and there's a big video villa, whatever you want, and it's like you have to totally change your process. The process, by the way, that created work that was good enough that maybe that started the conversation, and replace it with an entirely different process, oriented towards what you imagine sort of like an advertising situation as being. And if there was any luck involved in my career, it's just that I was never exposed to that. I was never exposed to the advertising world. I was never exposed to marketing. I never was exposed. I went to film school, and almost immediately was kind of like naive and stupid enough that the first films that I made with brands, I said, here's how we're going to do this. No, you're not allowed on set. Here I'm going to take all, I have sort of master control over the whole thing. We're going to make a film, et cetera, et cetera. And I made all of these very sweeping and, non-standard rules of how the film would be made. And, most people were like, well, that's not going to work for me, or that's not work for my client, et cetera. And I said, okay, that's okay. And what was left were people that, like Brandon and Allie, who said, okay, we trust your process. We like that kind of filmmaking. Go for it. And so I don't make tons of work, but the work that we do make are films that are really from a filmmaker's perspective. And that is extremely difficult to do. And it requires true advocacy in every entity. So, when we say that the brands or Traverse 32, was not that involved creatively, doesn't mean that wasn't an enormous amount of work, because that needs to be explained heavily, that needs to be defended, that needs to be justified, there's so many questions like, what do you mean that he's going to go make this film? And so all of these things have to be correct. And there needs to be sort of a thread of pureness of heart that this is what we want to do. And as a filmmaker, I cannot do what I do without extraordinary advocacy, and sort of internal entrepreneurship, because what we do breaks every process, breaks every status quo rule. If it fails, it will be an enormous failure because you really took a flyer and relinquished control. So, this does not line up with how large organizations work. And so without real risk taking and real advocacy inside of every organization, we can't do what we do. The contract might say that, but later on somebody will double back. And so that is what I have learned, is you really need people, human beings, who are willing to go to bat for a unique process, who believe it's the right thing. I mean, let's just move ahead with going ahead with the project because we have to do it now because it's the right thing to do. You heard Allie say. I mean, that's the spirit. So it's that environment, and the structure is as important as anything, because if you don't have that, even the most beautiful thing will get sort of chewed up in a process. And that's what I've learned, is to make sure that process is in place, that everybody's clear on what's about to happen, say things that, set expectations that may not be pleasant to talk about at the beginning of what it means. And if everything's green light, then, take off the plane and let's go.
I love that. So what I'm hearing is independent filmmaking supported by producers. And those producers just happen to be Traverse 32. You know, and I love that. I didn't come out of an advertising background. I just came out of a pure entertainment background. And it is interesting to see how divided the worlds are, but it does seem like they're coming together in a really beautiful way. But as it is that filmmaking approach to story first and everything in support of that story. And it sounds like you had an incredible producing team in Brendan and Ali. Brendan, can you tell us a little bit about how this project reflects Traverse 32's philosophy in this space, and anything that you hope that the industry takes away from this project from a Traverse 32? And I hope I'm saying
Yep.
I've said Traverse 32 every time, right?
Yep, that's right.
Cut that out, Jordan. No, I'll ask the question again. So Brendan, how does this project reflect Traverse 32's philosophy on the future of this space?
Sure. You know, I think that well, first I just want to say the projects that we take on, we're very choiceful about them as well. You know, so the work that we do, we're always trying to kind of elevate what's happening in the space and that intersection of brands and storytelling. You know, our first big film was the film 5B with Johnson and Johnson. You know, and that's a film that you know, has 100% Rotten Tomato score, and you know, is well regarded and well awarded, and we've always just strived to create work that moves people emotionally, and also still works for brands. You know, our franchise with Dear Santa is another example. But this film in particular, we want to tell stories that are important, you know, and that are important to the brands, to industry, and to the world. You know, if there's something that I would love our industry to take away from this, you know, there's so many conversations right now around AI, you know, and, you know, Ben had said, you know, it takes people on the producing side, like Ali and myself. And thank you so much for saying that, Ben. You're so kind. I hope that this film also reminds marketers and brands and agency leaders that it's people in their agencies, like Ilon, that have strong belief systems, that are outspoken, that are brilliant and bold, and that's where the ideas come from. You know, that when you have people that are empowered within our agencies, they get the opportunity to lend their beliefs and their mind and their spirit towards solving brand problems. That's really when I think magic happens in what we do. And I think Ilon is probably one of the best examples of that. And I think that's why the story rings so strongly. You know, I think broadly, and towards you know, certainly towards women because of the themes, but I think towards people that work in our industry, it hits a certain way.
That's beautiful, Brendan. I think what I took away from this conversation is L'Oreal really empowered Elon to be fearless, and then empowered Ben, right, to have freedom, which is in a way also, I heard the words like risk taking, but really the core to it, to me, felt like authenticity through and through. You know, authentic to core values, mission, even just saying we're going ahead before we've got all of our T's crossed and I's dotted, which is really wonderful to hear. And I think that is where the industry, if it isn't already going, hopefully this will be an impetus forward. And I just want to congratulate you guys. This was a absolutely beautiful film. I'm so excited to see it again in Park City. at Sundance and to see all of you. And it's been my absolute honor to have this conversation with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.